Hey, my friend, come on in and make yourself comfortable. I'm really glad you're here today. Maybe you're driving home from work. Maybe you're sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee. Or maybe you're simply looking for a few quiet minutes before life starts asking things from you again. Wherever you are, thank you for spending a little time with me. You know, life has a funny way of keeping us busy. There's always another email to answer, another bill to pay, another errand to run, another responsibility waiting for our attention. And before we know it, days become weeks, weeks become months, months become years, sometimes so quietly that we hardly notice. A few years ago, I heard a story that stayed with me, not because it was dramatic, not because it ended with some life-changing revelation, but because it reminded me of something I think many of us forget. Something simple, something important. It's the story of a friend of mine. Let's call him David. He's 42 years old, and for a long time, he believed something most of us believe, that there would always be more time. From the outside, David seemed to have a pretty good life, a successful career, a loving wife, two wonderful kids, a nice home, a busy calendar, plans for the future. Everything looked fine. In fact, most people would probably say he was doing very well. But like so many of us, David was busy. Always busy. Work deadlines, meetings, bills, responsibilities, school events, family commitments. One week turned into another. One month became the next. And before he knew it, years were passing faster than he ever imagined. His mother lived alone in a small town a few hours away. His father had passed away nearly 10 years earlier. Since then, she had stayed in the same house where David grew up, the house where she raised him. Every morning she followed the same routine. She opened the curtains, made herself a cup of coffee, and sat by the window overlooking her small backyard garden. On the table beside her sat an old cell phone. Every now and then she'd glance at it, not because she was expecting anything important, just because, well, I think most parents understand that feeling. The simple happiness of seeing their child's name appear on the screen. David loved his mother. That was never the problem. The problem was that he always thought there would be more time. He'd call her this weekend. He'd visit next month. He'd spend more time with her once work slowed down, once things settled down, once life became less hectic. But somehow, those later days kept moving farther away. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, David sat alone in his home office. He was cleaning out old voicemails, spam calls, business messages, missed calls, the usual clutter. He was about to delete everything when he noticed a voicemail from his mother. The message was nearly 3 years old. He had no idea why he'd never listened to it. Maybe he'd been in a meeting. Maybe he'd been traveling. Maybe he'd planned to listen later and simply forgot. He pressed play. His mother's voice filled the room. Soft, warm, familiar. "Hi, sweetheart. I was just calling to see how you were doing. Nothing's wrong. I just found myself thinking about you today. Give me a call when you have a chance. Love you." The message lasted less than 20 seconds. Then there was silence. David sat there staring at the screen. He looked at the date. 3 years ago. What shook him wasn't that he'd missed the message. It was that he couldn't remember what had been so important that day. He couldn't remember the meeting, the project, the client, the deadline. Whatever had seemed urgent enough to postpone listening to his mother's voice had completely disappeared from his memory. But her voice remained. He leaned back in his chair, and memories began finding their way back. He remembered learning to ride a bike. His mother, running behind him, holding the seat. He remembered waking up with a fever in the middle of the night and seeing her sitting beside his bed. He remembered high school baseball games. No matter the weather, she was always there in the stands. Funny thing about memories. Sometimes you think they're gone forever, until one small moment brings them rushing back, clear as yesterday. Later that night, David opened an old photo album. He slowly flipped through picture after picture. Birthdays, family vacations, school events, ordinary moments that didn't seem important at the time. Then he stopped. There was a photo of him at about 10 years old, standing proudly beside his very first bicycle, grinning from ear to ear. Behind him stood his mother, one hand shading her eyes from the sun, looking toward him, not at the camera, at him. David kept turning pages, and suddenly he noticed something. In photo after photo throughout his childhood, his mother wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at him, as if the most important thing in every picture had never been the moment itself. It had always been her son. For the first time in years, David realized something simple, something deeply true. No one in his life had thought about him more than his mother had. He picked up the phone, and he called her. After a few rings, she answered. David? Just one word. But he could hear the happiness in it. The kind of happiness only a parent feels when hearing their child's voice. They talked for nearly an hour. About nothing remarkable. The weather, the garden, the grandchildren, neighbors, everyday life. Then somewhere in the conversation, she laughed oddly. You know, honey, I've gotten a little forgetful lately. The other day I walked into the kitchen and couldn't remember why I went in there. David laughed too, but something tightened in his chest, because for the first time, he wasn't seeing time on a calendar. He was seeing it in his mother's voice. 2 weeks later, David took a few days off work. He packed up the family and drove to see her. There wasn't a holiday, no special occasion, no emergency. He simply wanted to go. His mother baked the apple pie he'd loved since he was a boy. The grandchildren ran around the yard laughing. The house felt alive again. That afternoon, David sat beside his mother on the porch. The sun rested softly on her silver hair. For once, he didn't check his email. He didn't look at the clock. He didn't think about work. He simply sat there, listening to stories he'd heard a dozen times before. And for the first time in years, he wasn't impatient. He was grateful. Grateful that he was there. Grateful that she was there. Grateful that life had given him the chance to realize what mattered before it was too late. You know, as I sat with this story, I found myself thinking about all the times I've said the same thing David did. I'll call tomorrow. I'll stop by next week. I'll make more time when things settle down. Maybe you've said those things too. Most of us have. Not because we don't care, not because we don't love the people in our lives, but because somewhere deep down, we quietly assume there will always be another opportunity, another weekend, another visit, another conversation. And most of the time, we don't even realize we're making that assumption. The truth is, none of us really know how much time we have with the people we love. And I don't say that to make anyone feel guilty. Life is busy. We're all carrying responsibilities. We're all doing the best we can. But every now and then, a story like this gently taps us on the shoulder and reminds us to look up, to notice, to appreciate, to be present. Because one day, what we'll remember most won't be the meetings we attended, or the emails we answered, or the deadlines we met. We'll remember the people, the conversations, the laughter around a kitchen table, the phone calls, the ordinary moments that turned out not to be ordinary at all. And maybe that's what this story is really about. Not regret, just gratitude. Gratitude for the people who are still here, and gratitude for the chance to tell them what they mean to us while we still can. And if someone came to mind while you were listening today, maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe it's simply your heart reminding you of someone who matters. Whoever that person is, I hope they are doing well. And I hope you get the chance to spend a little time with them soon. Thank you for sitting with me for a while today. These conversations mean a lot to me. And if this story brought back a memory, a smile, or even a moment of reflection, then I'm grateful we shared this time together. Until next time, my friend, take care of yourself. Be kind to the people you love. And don't forget to make room for the things that truly matter. This is The Things That Matter. Stories that remind us what truly matters. And I'll see you again soon.